The story of Star Wars spans centuries, and our next guest focused on making history fun. Boba's showing up everywhere. After the break, we're checking in with celebrity historian Raffi Andonian about the month-long celebration of history. That's next on Good Day in WA. May is National Preservation Month, so we're joined again by celebrity historian Raffi Andonian to share more about Americana and historic preservation. From George Washington to here locally in Arkansas. Thanks for joining us again, Raffi. Great to see you.
Of course. I even brought
what did you bring?
Master's degree in historic preservation.
Just to make sure that we
for
know.
The month, right? The
Absolutely.
diplomacy just sits in a tube.
Yes.
Nice.
Well, what is historic preservation, Raffi?
We think of historic preservation as putting something, preserved in the past, but really I think it's about the future, because we decide what we're going to recognize and protect for the future, and it's not always behind a red rope or in a museum. It's often in your district. It's a private home or a commercial building that a business is in or something like that, right? And sometimes it means that we're recognizing something that's difficult in the past, and sometimes it means we're celebrating something. But my favorite aspect to focus on is the National Park Service, because I used to work for the National Park Service at different sites. We have a couple of them here nearby. They're not just Yellowstone and Yosemite, but here nearby, for example, we have the Pea Ridge. There's me working at Gettysburg, the battlefield.
Yeah.
We have a Civil War site right here nearby, Pea Ridge, for example.
Sure, yeah.
Possibly the most important battlefield west of the Mississippi, because it's what helped Missouri stay in the Union. We also have Fort Smith, of course, which is not only the third largest town in Arkansas, but also has a National Park Service site there that interprets the frontier in Arkansas, even the Trail of Tears. So there's all kinds of things the National Park Service does. Even besides national parks, it has grant programs, for example. It has a training and research center. It even has a preservation technology center. So preservation and technology go together. And a great example of that is what I brought in right here.
Yeah, this papyrus?
This is papyrus that we have here in our hands from Egypt. My mom is from Egypt.
Wow.
And I was just hanging out at the Historical Society.
That's
in the
amazing.
background.
Yeah.
Guess who they had? Someone who has a degree in art history and chemistry. Do you think that's helpful in some preserving something like this?
Absolutely.
So that's why there is something like the Preservation Technology Center, in which they're working with technology to preserve things like this. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. And the National Park Service does even provides grants for private citizens to work.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
This might be a bit of an odd question, but did historic preservation exist in historic times?
It did, especially in the early part of the 19th century, shortly after George Washington, because his home was at risk. The Mount Vernon was at risk, and so was John Hancock's home. You know John Hancock, the guy who wrote the big signature on the Declaration of Independence? Well, they were both at risk. Mount Vernon, as we know, got protected with the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, one of the biggest success stories of preservation early on. But John Hancock's home did not. It was torn down, and townhouses went up. And this created this uproar in the country in the 19th century, saying, what kind of country are we? What does this say about our values? Are we going to value commercial real estate, or are we going to value the heroes of our past? There was this actual debate, believe it or not. So I would say that they did exist, even in historic times, the stuff that we look back on. A couple other quick examples that are really interesting is when people moved from the East Coast to the Midwest, and from the European descent, and they found various mounds from Native American civilizations.
Sure.
They referred to that as ancient America, so they could use that to compete with Europe to show we have a past as well. So they did actually look to the past to try to create a certain image. Even if you look at some architecture, it tries to revive colonial architecture, and that was a story of trying to tell us how far we've come across those period of time. So preservation's been used in different ways.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
Raffi, thanks for filling us in. And the month is celebrated all month long, is that right?
It is celebrated all month long, and there are a couple of local Arkansas things you can look at. Of course, you can go to Old State House. That's one of the oldest stories here. You can check out Preservation Arkansas, which is a nonprofit, and you can check out the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program, which is through the state program, provides grants as well for local preservation efforts for you all to check out.
That's awesome. Raffi, thanks for all that details, and hang out with us for just a second. We're going to jump into some hot topics. Who says you outgrow toys? I know that I don't. How collectors are keeping themselves young at heart. That story kicks off today's trending stories. Here's a look at our hot topics brought to you by Walton Arts Center. The original Star Wars movie spawned prequels, sequels, and lots of merchandise. The largest toy collectors fair in the UK took place last month, and the franchise provided its staying power. Now, what may look like old plastic to some is instead a treasured link to a childhood memory for another. Star Wars action figures were from the 1980s, and they were sold from up to 600 pounds a piece. Now, some dealers said they can bring in big money with this brand, up to 5,000 pounds a day, and it's only a matter of time before merchandise from the sequels begins to become collector's items as well.
Gosh.
Talking about history, Raffi, there it is right there.
There's
Those
some
are
information right
those are
there,
some
right?
toys from my childhood for sure. A galactic honor will be bestowed upon the director of Star Wars. George Lucas will receive an honorary Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. The director will be honored at the closing ceremony to the 77th French Film Festival on May 25th. This accolade not new to the Star Wars crew. Last year, Han Solo himself, Harrison Ford, was awarded one. Cannes runs from May 14th through the 25th. I love to see this recognition.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating that Harrison Ford got it a little bit before George Lucas.
I
But
know.
of course, Harrison Ford has many iconic characters.
Yes.
And George Lucas just has Star Wars.
But, I mean, he created it. He gave that to us. He deserves
He absolutely.
For sure.
100%. Raffi, I don't know if you know this. As a historian, you might want to be aware that today marks National Space Day.
Oh.
Did you know that the first
I did
Friday
not.
in May is dedicated to the extraordinary achievements, benefits, and opportunities in the exploration and use of space? The goal of the observance is to promote math, science, technology, and engineering education in young people. And while we've only been exploring space for about the last 60 years, there is so much that we've learned. So it truly is the new frontier. Maybe that's stealing a bit of Star Trek lore right there, but that's okay. Space Day. What do you think about that? Maybe we can come back. You can
I
come
think
back
it's really cool. There's a lot of fascinating space history, absolutely.
Yeah.
That all that's in the context of the Cold War as well.
Oh, fascinating.
okay.
Yeah, the space race, right?
Exactly, very much in the context of the Cold War. So
Yeah.
historic, context and what's going on geopolitically very much affects things like the space race, and then of course that accelerated the space research that we did in the United States.
Yeah, certainly. I know you're going to be excited about this next story.
I'm so
Jacob.
excited.
So, The Phantom Menace, which is probably from your childhood.
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah. It's going to return to theaters to celebrate Lucasfilm's 25th anniversary. The prequel film, originally released in 1999, hits local theaters tonight. The screening will also feature an exclusive sneak peek of the upcoming Disney Plus series, Star Wars: The Acolyte. The series follows an investigation into a shocking crime spree that pits a Jedi Master against a dangerous warrior from his past. That new series will debut on the streaming service on June 4th.
Amazing.
Yes. I got to ask you, since you're in the hot seat, do you have a favorite Star Wars movie?
A favorite Star Wars movie? I don't know if I have a favorite, because to me it's about how they fit together.
Oh, yeah.
It's really about the whole picture is how I see it.
Yeah.
The series is I look at it almost as modules or chapters.
Sure.
That's how I see it, as a
Yeah.
holistic view.
Yeah, what did you think about the storytelling choice to tell kind of the middle, then the beginning, and then the end?
I think that's fascinating, because what happens is I love stories like that in various contexts, because I like a story that throws me off.
Yeah.
Recently the Oppenheimer movie did that too, right? It kind of jumped back and forth, and I think that for me it keeps me more engaged, because
Yeah.
it's not exactly what you're expecting in the exact chronological order.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
sure.
What do you think about that? I know we're going to get into it in a moment with more in-depth look at the movies, but what do you
Yeah.
think about the choice of storytelling in that way?
Well, I think whenever the prequels came about, after George Lucas had made the original three, he thought, all these people have fathers, mothers, and how did this kind of come to be?
Yeah.
So to see that rise of Anakin from a young boy turn into the evil Darth Vader was amazing.
Yeah.
It's a creative process, I
Yes.
think, and that's really cool, because you see the creative development
Yeah.
happen as well. And I think that creative process does not always happen in some sort of sequence, right?
That's right. Sometimes it comes in modules,
Yep.
like you
Yep.
said. Well, whether you are a diehard fan or a newbie, the order of the Star Wars movies is hotly debated, and we're going to be back with a breakdown with Jacob of the franchise that we all know and love. Ooh, and we still got our friends standing by. Hopefully we get a passing grade from Darth Vader and Boba Fett. We'll be back with more Good Day in WA.